Okay, everybody. We are back and spiritual experience. We just had our brother Danny in here, young kid, just got a year sober. Wonderful story. I hope he sticks around. I've seen it a lot. But this kid, like, he really, really earned it. And that's it's always a powerful thing. It's always a powerful thing for somebody like me to see that it still works. And, he kept coming, he kept coming. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Drinking some of this energy and focus crack juice, C4, whatever. Anyway, yeah, I've been meaning to get back and do like a little bit of my reflection on the episode. Typically, I try to do it, as quickly as I can, but some things get in the way, and I went to go see family, and however that goes, and I just came back into town. I went to one of the meetings that just got turned back on here in New York that I love, and it's a men's meeting, and it's like, it feels like home to me. So that was good, and we talked a lot about God, we talked a lot about family, we talked a lot about a lot of things, and it's always nice to like kind of touch base with home base, and that kind of stuff gets me centered. Been off work for a little while and just kind of dusting some things off to get back in the groove. But yeah, the kid Danny, man, he's got like, here's somebody who had a lot on their plate, still has a lot on his plate. It's almost like the first year, in some senses, is like the toughest year, and it's also like the easiest year because all you really got to do is just kind of like, make it. You just got to stay sober. You just got to really show up as best you can, and if you take the suggestions, you have a really good chance to make that happen and to give yourself an opportunity to change your life. And I think that's really what is actually the scary part of this whole thing, is that, when people decide to change their life for whatever it is, whether it's drinking and drugs or just, I just think people are just really, I've encountered this, so I'm not thinking like speculating, but a lot of people are very tired. They're just tired. They subscribe to this thing that's been like spoon-fed to them forever. And they're like, oh, you got to live like this, and then you got to do this, and you got to get a house, and you have to make kids, and you have to have security, and like all of these things, And then one day they wake up, and it's like a nightmare. It's like a nightmare. And then what are they gonna do? They've already subscribed, and then it's gonna take a lot of faith to say to yourself that you don't really have all the answers, and that maybe you can do more with yourself to have a happier life. And I think that really starts with, some reflection and some honesty, and there's going to be anger involved in that, and there's, you're going to feel maybe betrayed. These are all the things that I felt, and I'm sure Danny in his first year has felt the same way, because it's such a roller coaster once you take those blinders off, and once you take away that crutch of, whether it's drugs and alcohol or self-pity or finger pointing, and you just take like accountability, for your own happiness and for your life, then it becomes, it's almost like you're asking yourself, okay, do I want to live in the matrix or do I want to live out of the matrix? When you're in the matrix, things are just happening, and they're just happening. This is just life. And then I guess when you're out of it and you just say, hey, listen, there's only a limited amount of time that I'm going to be able to spend on this planet with these people in this body, in this skin. What do I want to do? And then even though you've traveled all the way down this one road, to like just, come to like a jogging, walking stop. It's a very lonely thing because, many people think they're the only ones that go through that, but that's bullshit. We all go through everything, I don't think anybody more severe than anybody else as far as like normal course of actions and coming of age and finding out who you are. And, I think we're going to be forever growing up, and so it's nice to see, this kid, he's got legit mental afflictions, I don't know what it's like to be like that. But I know that, I know that when he says stuff, I believe him, And he shared a lot with us, and that was it was very touching, and it was very nice. And the thing I left him with was like, you know what? It's easier to get 1 year than to stick around for 2, because once you dust yourself off, and once the smoke clears, if you've done all the work that he's done, which is like, he came to meetings, he got a sponsor, he started working steps. He started doing service. He started to change his life, like the spiritual life that is at the end of, I shouldn't say at the end of the rainbow. It's throughout the process of actually, doing this kind of work is really a huge reward. You're just like, it's they call it a psychic change where like you can really, you can really change the way you view the world and the way you choose to live on earth, and we're very fortunate, very fortunate that like there's not many, what can I say? I'm not going to say boundaries, but there's hurdles, but there's not that many walls that are in front of us in this country. I'm born in America, and I always say that basically I'm just a sperm and an egg that happen to be born on this patch of dirt, and there's a lot of liberties that are afforded me. I don't even get into the whole thing where like, oh, well, this is stolen land and blah, 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 blah. Like, bro, that's not even in my lifetime. It's not part of my life. I don't behave that way. I don't feel guilty, but whatever advantages that we have, number one is to be grateful for them and recognize them. And I think the only thing to do after that is really just use them to our advantage. Use them to, and I mean our advantage in the way of like, how can we use these privileges, if you want to use that word, in a very positive and loving and uplifting way, and not in a way of just, oh, I'm going to, by any means necessary, secure my future, secure my, I got to protect myself from everybody else because they're all coming to get me. Just that whole mentality, I don't really subscribe to it anymore. I can't say that I did a whole lot, because really, like, when I was in my former life, I wasn't making any plans for the future. I was just living for the moment, so I wasn't really threatened by anybody else. In some ways, I had a very high bottom and a very low bottom. A high bottom in the sense that when I was 21, I'm going to say 21. I don't know. How old was I? Let's see. 42 now. Let's see, 2021 minus 2000. So that was 20 years ago. So I was 22, I think, around September 11. Yeah, it was like 20 years ago. Jesus Christ. Yeah, so I was like 21, 22. And I remember, It was a pivotal. It was a pivotal moment. It was a pivotal moment. You know, it was a pivotal moment in my life. 9/11. And I don't know what caused me really to go down this rabbit hole, but it was. It was a pivotal moment. You know, I was very close to the World Trade Center when it happened, and you know, it was bad. It was bad, man. It was bad. And the other people who were down there that day, they understand how bad it was. And it's so bad that, you know, you don't even really talk about it. Like, there's people who were not there, who saw it from their living room couch, and they were so devastated, and they were crying, they were hurt, and they were whatever. And I think maybe some of that would have been minimized if they actually had to run for their life like we had to run for our life. And there was a lot of powerlessness there. And it was early in the morning, and after those planes hit, and we were trapped in the financial district. There's a whole host of stories. And I was there with some of the people that I worked with at the time. You know, it was just like chaos. You know, it was crazy. And I still had it in my mind that there was like this, like, I'm going to say bodega, but I don't like to say bodega unless I'm like in the hood. So it was like a grocery, it was a bodega, but it was in like, yeah, it wasn't a real bodega, but it was a convenience store, I guess you want to call it that. But yeah. Anyway, so we ran in there. I remember running through the store, and I opened up like this broom closet that I didn't know was a broom closet. I thought it was a back way out because there was just so much mayhem. And there was a guy hiding in the closet, like shivering, shaking. So we ran out of the store, and, you know, because we went in there and we thought that, like, listen, there's no way out. Like, it's over for us, you know. That's what I was thinking in a very small, minuscule way. And it was it was just a crazy day, man. You know, I saw a lot of people jump to their death, and I think that's the thing that stays with me most, aside from the second plane hitting the tower. And you'll never forget that explosion if you were very close. It shook your whole field of view, and just that smell is crazy. But anyway, so I still managed to make it to a bodega, and I said, whatever, we're not going to make it out of here. They're going to find us somewhere. So I bought a throwaway camera and 2 22s of Heineken early in the morning. That was it. If that doesn't show you what singleness of focus or singleness of purpose is, or whatever, like how my brain was working, it was just like, dude, I guess I'm just going to have a drink, take some pictures, and I'm out of here, you know. And by the grace, we made it. And, you know, for everyone else who didn't make it, R.I.P. to them. You know, shout out to firefighters and I guess the cops too. Yeah, of course the cops. You know, the cops were good guys that day. They're not always good guys. But that day they were. And yeah, it was a crazy thing. Anyway, point of the story. After that event, you know, my office at the time, I was working at a Wall Street firm on the telephone selling stocks, and I had just come to the end of this crazy program where just like you got to go in there and you basically just work a gazillion hours a day and stay on the telephone. And, you know, in hindsight, it's actually, you know, it's a really important part of my life, you know, where I can say that, like, listen, like, at one point, you know, they gave us a telephone book and a telephone and told you, you know, we're going to teach you how to make money, and they did. So point is that, like, we got relocated to Jersey City, and what was it, October, November, December? And my firm, they took me. They didn't have to take me. They fired a lot of people who weren't pulling their weight. And I wasn't really pulling my weight, I got to be honest, but there were some good people that I guess, you know, allegedly fought for me to come. And My firm used it as an opportunity to get rid of dead weight, and that's what they did. And they told me, okay, you can come and work, but you're not going to get a draw or anything. We're just going to put you on your own. I was literally in that business. You had to, you were a cold caller, and then you work for 6 months, and then you pass your Series 7 and the other exams, blah, blah, blah. And then you have to open accounts for your boss and give them to him as repayment for teaching you and paying you the $250 a week you were getting paid, working 7 in the morning till 7 or 8 at night or whatever it was. And yeah, so they were like, I was one account away. I had 19 accounts. It was crazy. And even that in its own, that's a story for another day. But so they're like, listen, you don't have to open the last account. You can come work, but we're not going to give you any draw, no salary. Like, it's basically sink or swim. So, that, I was like, yeah, it says October, November, December. So for those 2 months, I was barely scraping by, but I worked my balls off. And, it was crazy. I don't know how much money I made, but it wasn't a lot. I remember like that year, my like W-2 or whatever, maybe it was like 20,000 or something, or 30,000. It was very small, is what I'm saying. No offense if that's your tax bracket. I'm sorry, but you can do better. So, yeah, that's what I did. And then so I remember because it was the end of the year, I made like 20,000 or whatever it was. And then I was 22 years old. And the next year, unbeknownst to me, they trained me to be an assassin on the telephone. And the next year I was that age, and I made like 140,000 or 160,000. And I had arrived, and it was incredible. And I proved it to myself. I fucking did it, and I was doing it. And there was a lot of money for a young kid like that, and then the money grew. And the year after that, it was more money. And, I'm saying that to say that, the whole time I was an active, I had, the whole life like swallowed me whole. I basically, in hindsight, I became like a statistic in some ways in that business, because I've never gone to, I have a high school diploma, and I limped out getting that, but in that business, there are people who just kind of mill around, and they don't really make any money, but they're like, oh, I'm a broker and I work and blah, blah, blah. And they don't have, they don't have it. But they have enough just to be on the team, but they don't have enough to make the plays, And I was making plays. So I was in that kind of group, and I was a young kid. They used to call me Baby Alfred. It's so funny. They used to call me Baby Alfred. And because I was the baby, but I was like relentless, like an alcoholic, drug addict. I was not, nobody was going to stop me, and I was doing it, but I didn't really have a lot to show for that money. I spent it all on the life. I spent it all on the life, just whatever you think that stuff is, that's what I did. I don't even watch any of those stupid Wall Street movies, The Wolf of Wall Street. And I remember when the Boiler Room movie came out, we all went to the theater to see it in the middle of the afternoon. And I listened, and we were watching them. We're like, wow, these guys suck, Because like I was making, 150,000, maybe 200,000, and I was the baby. There were guys that I was hanging out with that my boss, one of the owners of the firm, he went to his high school reunion. He was 28 years old. This kid, I say now kid because he was only 2 years older than my son. But at 28, this guy, I remember overhearing him, like, dude, that guy was making like $10 million a year. And he went to his high school reunion, and he was a fucking savage. This guy was a beast, you know? This guy was a beast. And, yeah, so I was, whatever. So, but those guys, so in that world, yeah, there are people who are, you know, once you kind of get like, you know, coined in, if you want to call it that, you know, and you're in, you know, right place, right time, I guess. But, you know, I was just so young and I was so lost. And so the guys who were really making money, they rode like, some people will try to say that they got lucky, or maybe I got lucky. And like, some of that may be true. I guess luck means being in the right place at the right time. But everybody else on earth was there too, you know? So the difference is there were some of us who put in the work and some of us who didn't. And yeah, because the guys that owned my company, they were very young, 20, like I said, 28. The other guy was like 32, 33. And, you know, they came in right off of the 90s .com bubble, you know. So they rode that whole bubble, the .com bubble. And even when the bubble exploded, you know, whatever. And after 9/11, the market was terrible too. But, yeah, they rode that bubble. And then the smart ones that rode it, they took that money that they made and they dumped it into the real estate market in New York at that time. So they rode two fucking huge waves. And in hindsight, it's impressive. It's very impressive. Because I was in the same position, maybe on a smaller scale, but I could have been buying real estate and whatever. No, I was buying drugs. I was buying dinners. I was buying trips or whatever, coming out of blackouts in Florida. Don't know how I got there. The whole thing, you know. I was doing that, and they were doing the other stuff, you know. And even though they were throwing down partying hard crazy, but they weren't bit with the bug that I had. And some of them were. There were a few. There was a few guys who were also, you know, fucked up in the game. It's hard to live a life when nobody could tell you no. You know, I was making more money, I think, than my parents, and my life was so unmanageable. I was still living in their basement. You know, and that was nearing the end for me. So, yeah, that was it. You know, that was a big deal. You know, I thought I was a big deal. And then I ran, and I guess that pain that was chasing me my whole life, that I was a step or two in front of, it just got a hold of me and it wouldn't let go. Yeah, it wouldn't let go. And it was torture. And I had to drink. I had to drug. I had to be this guy. I wanted to get off the ride. It was so bad. It was so bad, you know. In some ways, you think, wow, this is like a dream come true. You know, I was making more money than I could spend, you know, realistically. I didn't have enough wherewithal to go and buy an apartment or buy a small building or do whatever. No, I was just partying it away. But I had more money than I could party away every month. Every month it was like a race to zero, you know. And all of my attitudes and my behavior, and which I talk about all the time, all the I'll show you, all of that, I was there. I had arrived. So, you know, getting to a place where you think you want to be, and then when you get there, you're like, the wallpaper in here sucks. Or I don't like this window. Or this isn't what I thought it would be. This isn't what I hoped it would be. This isn't what I dreamed it would be. And then you can't, or you feel like you can't, you know, leave the room. You can't leave the room. Now I'm here, you know. There's nothing else. And I was very unhappy. And I was young. And I was ignorant. I was, yeah, I was all of those things. And I was losing my grip on reality because it felt like the ultimate betrayal. Like all of these things that I specifically put in I did all of that stuff, you know, I was making the moves. I didn't do it all on my own. I would never say that. But I put myself in environments where everybody else was winning. And then when they see how hungry you are, they will help you win. And that's what it was. And there was a lot of ego. It was just, you know, I could tell funny, stupid stories about it. And maybe on other ones I'll touch on that stuff because it is a, you know, you have to become an animal to be that kind of successful, you know. Like you can't do it just kind of shuffling along. You have to almost believe the lie, you know, and then that lie becomes like the truth. And then you got to deal with the truth. So I'm saying that to be like, you know, I know what it's like, you know, to wake up with yourself, by yourself. Maybe you have stuff going on in your life, or maybe you have nothing going on in your life, and you're still trying to be comfortable in your own skin. And that's such a, like, I hate that phrase. Like, oh, I want to be comfortable in my own skin. It sounds very like woo-woo. But I just want the noise to turn off is really what it's about. And how does that happen, you know? How does that happen? So, yeah. So whatever, I find myself in recovery at that age. I think I was 24, 42 now. Let me see, how old was I? I think I was 24, 42 minus 18. Yeah, I was 24. So I lived like an animal for like maybe like a real unhinged, unleashed savage. Only a couple of years. You know, there are guys who because what it took for me to get there, like I had already lost myself a long time ago. And when I was a young kid, my teenage years, early 13, 12, I was already down that path that led me to that, where I was in that space, where I'm staring at a bar. I'm at the bar. I'm not, you know, I'm staring at the physical bar, looking at this Grey Goose martini, saying to myself, you know, here comes trouble. And I want to stop and I want to get off. And I can't. You know, it's a huge fork in the road. And it's very, you know, there's a lot more pain on the way. And you can smell it. It's on the way. You can smell it. So, whatever. You know, I found myself, by the grace, you know, introduced to recovery in this way of life. And the whole thing about recovery is that, you know, it goes back to, I guess, what I was touching on before. It's that psychic change. Like, how do I change the way I feel, the way I think, the way I behave? Like, how do I even do that? This is who I am. I show up here. At the time, I had a nice full head of Gordon Gekko hair, you know, Hickey Freeman suits. What was that? I had a 35 millimeter Cartier Pasha with the blue dials. That was everything. That was everything. That watch was like, you know, having, you know, another penis or something. It was worthless, basically. But at the time, I thought it was everything. You know, and it's funny because I remember I was dialing. I remember in the cubicle, I was dialing the telephone, and in that life, like, you know, when you're just you're earning your stripes. Like, that's one of the first things you do. You first big check, man, you get yourself a nice watch. You know, and yeah, because you got to keep the costume on, right? You got to play the role, look the part, be the part. So I'm dialing, and then I finally get it. My boy Sean, he found a place online and these other guys, the big timers, they had like, at the time, Daytonas were everything. So they had the Daytonas, which is that solid gold Rolex, in case you guys don't know. They had those things, and other guys had the Breitling. And I was like, no, I want that Cartier. You know, nobody in my office had one, but I was like, that's what baby Alfred is going to get, that Cartier. And I dialed the phone, and eventually I got it. And when I got it, it was like, you know, another I had arrived moment. And just, you know, just to keep the humbling effect, my boss, the owner of the firm, he came out, the older one, nice guy, Mike. Mike came out. He looked at, my wife looked at, he says, Jared, it's a nice watch, man. I said, thank you. And then I couldn't wait to tell him, as the Jew that I am, that what kind of deal I got. I said it was listed for whatever. I think I paid $4,000 for it, and it was listed at like $4,600 or whatever. And he looked at me and he was like, very nonchalant. He's like $4,000. He's like, is that a lot of money for you? And I was like, holy shit. He's like, yeah, get back on the phone. He just fucking walked away, you know. He just walked away. And yeah, so it was that. Either way. So, okay, so how do I, you know, that's like my value system, you know, is this whole costume. This whole costume is my value system, you know. I find my way into AA. I start getting sober. I move into Brooklyn, into Park Slope, Windsor Terrace area, nice area. I have my son with me. I'm living with somebody else. You know, I'm basically like a yuppie, man. I'm a young kid who can afford to pay the high rents. And even at that time, it was high, and it's way higher now. I can't even imagine what it is now over there. And, yeah, and that was it. I had this life. I felt like and then I was newly sober. I had about 8 months of sobriety. So I was like, how the hell do I felt like I just woke up into this life, man. I have this job. I have this fucking kid. I got this girl here. What is going on? You know? Who am I? Like, is it this is it? Like this, you know, from the outside. I had a new car, I think. Was it new? Yeah. I remember, yeah, it was new. It was new. But it wasn't anything fancy, you know. It was like a brand new Mercury Mountaineer. I had a black one. But it was pretty dope. It had heated seats and all that shit. You know. Anyway. So, but I was like, I want to be somebody else. I don't even want to be this guy anymore. And I'm going to work every day. And luckily for me, and listen, the people that I worked with, like they saw me, and they saw the humanity. Listen, there were drugs flying all over that place, but the people who were responsible, the people who were really hitting it, the guys who were like printing money, multimillionaires to this day, like they were like, listen, we'll send you to go get help. We'll send wherever you got to go. We'll pay for it. We don't have to even tell anybody about it. You can't be walking around here in a freaking heroin haze, you know? And I think it was because I'm speculating now. So, yeah, I'm just speculating on what other people's intent was. I'm going to say it was like maybe 25 or 50% because they liked me in some way, and because they saw that I could really do it. And it's almost like a mad scientist thing. You take this kid who comes into your place, and I was 19 years old, maybe, or 20 years old, no college. It was high school diploma, no felony. That was the way, that was the only requirement. And I had like at the time, like I had my son, you know, before my 16th birthday. So I was all of these strikes against me that I basically put in my own path. Like, you know, life didn't hand me a complete bowl of dog shit. You know, I went out and I did a lot of the digging to find it on my own and put it on my own plate. So I think part of them is just like, dude, man, we took this zero and we turned him into this thing. This thing is like possible. It's like, you know, like Frankenstein. yeah, so, and I think they cared about me. I really did. I really did. At least one of them did. The other one, he was a prick. So, yeah, Mike, he cared about me. I felt it. But the other thing, just as a business thing, they're like, there's all these people who are like beneath me, and now I'm at the bottom rung of a different ladder. There's still ladders that are below me that I already went through, and these people, they're protecting their business. They're like, dude, you're somebody that these other people are looking up to, because you're younger than them and you're more successful than they are, and they're struggling and they can't fucking open accounts and they can't blah 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 blah, and like you're over here with the rest of us, Blue Water Grill, riding around in Bell's Ferrari. He only took me for that one ride, but that's one. Oh, Ducati, flying down the FDR in 996 Ducati, brand new, like with your, you have this thing that they want, but you're over here shuffling around like a mope, and you're struggling. Even though, like, we see you're struggling from up here, but the people below you think that you're crushing it. So, yeah, they offered me help. And I was like, no, I got it. So, whatever. Anyway, so when I first got into, so then, now I have this life, and I don't like it, I feel a sense of responsibility to my son. Oh, I thought somebody was trying to walk in. I feel a sense of responsibility to my son, but like, it's like a passing, fleeting thought. If I'm being honest, it's almost like this is my cross to bear. Like if I thought about it, it was in a very self-pitying way. It wasn't in a loving and caring way. Not all the time. I gotta say, my son is the love of my life. He's always been, but, alcohol and drugs always come before him if I'm using. So I'm just being honest with myself. So anyway, so I woke up in this life, and even when I was counting days, man, and we went to a Christmas party. I forgot where we are. I think we were SPQR down in Little Italy. We, rent out the whole place, all of the things that you think we did. And I remember my boss looked at me, and he's like, in front of everybody, he's like, Jared, I heard you have like 45 days sober now. And I was like, yeah. And I never told him. What I did was I just, I started going to meetings, and I would go to a noon meeting. So I would work. I'd show up to work. I wouldn't do anything. I just kind of putz around until noon. So I was just like, don't drink till noon. Don't drink till noon. And then, whatever, I would go to the meeting, and then I'd come back home and then go to a meeting at night. And then after a while, eventually, I came to the point where, in order for me to stay sober, like I wasn't happy. There was no amount of, that was the point. The point is I wasn't happy. I wasn't drinking. I had this life. I had a little bit of money left. I don't know. A little bit to me. And, I didn't know what to do with myself. And I was lost. And I was just I was on my way. And then eventually I had to leave that job. And I let my whole business at that little business that I had there just kind of wind itself into the ground. Because I remember one day, hold on. I remember one day I got on telephone, and I had to spin some stories to some people just to pay my bills, and I did it. I was like, ba 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 ba. And then I hung up the phone, and I remember I was just like fell on the floor, like, whew, that was tough for the first time in my life. It was tough to tell those stories and to promise that hope, just to get, 8,000 or 12,000 or whatever it was at the end of that phone call that I made. I was like, hey, listen, I got to pay all these bills, and this is how we do it, So that's when I knew it was like the beginning of the end. And I was scared. And, I was facing myself. And I was coming to the realization that I didn't know anything. And all of the things that I thought about, the things that I wanted were all, it was like a fairy tale. And then the ship had sailed. That's what it felt like. So I remember, like, eventually, like, I left that job. And I left that job. It took me like 2 years to leave that job. And I left that job one day at a time. I did. I left it one day at a time. And this is how powerful the program works. And this is something I want to drive home, is that, you know, I was going to this noon meeting every day, well, Monday through Friday, because they didn't have it on weekends there. And it was so dope, man. It was so dope. It was called, it was at 74 Trinity Place. It was called Exchange Views. We used to call it Strange Views. And there was all different walks of life of people there, whatever. Either way, this guy, Bill, that's the good thing about this stuff. I could just spit out names and nobody knows unless you know. Anyways, this guy, Bill, it was his, it was his job to catch people like me. Like, he worked for an agency that, like, he could have went back to his office and been like, dude, I found a pod of people who are playing in the gray area. And whatever, we can take them, whatever. And he fucking didn't. He didn't. He just was my friend. And he didn't judge me. He watched me grow. And when I came in there and said, listen, I'm leaving that job and I'm going to go work for Bo, doing, like, financial recruiting, whatever. Like, him and this other guy, Bill, there were two Bills. And a black Bill and a white Bill. We didn't call him that, but that's just that's how they looked. So the black Bill worked for, like, a very prestigious investment bank. And the other Bill was basically like a police in our thing. At the time, I think it was still called the NASD. But they were like, Jesus. We were by the coffee table, like, dude, we've been waiting for you to leave that fucking hellhole. And yeah, it happened when it was supposed to. It did. And I was so grateful that I didn't have to go through that transition on my own. Like, I can't imagine, and I have an amazing life, and all of this happened a very long time ago. This all happened 15 years ago or something. But I can't imagine having to put this life together and having to figure it all out, like, on my own, you know? Like, I had this community, this recovery community. Yeah, we're bonded by a common thread of, like, yeah, we can't drink, we can't do drugs, and we don't want, but, like, you know. But it's not even what recovery is really about. Recovery is about in building a life and building a person that is palatable enough that you don't even want to drink. Like, I do not want to drink. I never want to drink, ever. I don't. Like, I'm never like, oh my God, I can't, you know, I wish I had a drink, or none of that stuff. It doesn't even enter my mind. If it did, it wouldn't be abnormal, but it just doesn't. I know, you know, I have respect. I'm not scared of any of that stuff, but I have respect for it. Like, dude, you know, I could barely manage my own life now with all the help I get. I have therapists, I have sponsor, I have, you know, thousands of members of people in AA and NA that I know personally, and then aside from millions all over the world where I can just walk into any meeting and I'll be at home, and then there's people that will help me, you know. So, like, yeah, it's assisted living. I can never do it on my own. And it's, to be honest, it's not really fun. It's not really fun, like, to do it on your own. It's fucking whack, dude. So I'm just so happy that this kid, Danny, bringing it back to him, like, dude, man, he put his first year together. And he did it during the pandemic, and he did it by making phone calls and by not being alone. And I guess the struggle is like, how do we bring this kind of, if that kind of community and that kind of love and that kind of, this environment can produce somebody like him, you know, a day at a time, and even like myself and many other people that I know, like how can we make the other people who are struggling, like how do we help them? How do we help them? How do we help them not feel so alone? How do we help them with life tools, like not tools on how to be, how to be successful? It's very easy. It's a lot of self-analysis, a lot of taking your own inventory, a lot of being honest with yourself, a lot of hanging your hat on accountability. It's a lot. There is nobody, but you. In that sense, like you got to put in the work. There are people who will help you, whatever, but you got to put in the work. They say it's you and God in the boat. Like you row, God steers. That's it. He don't row. So, but I find myself to be in a happy place, and there are storms that come in and out of my life. My ego wants to say like you wouldn't believe, like some kind of but it's regular life, man. But I had a sibling who I love dearly, my sister Dara. She passed away. I had to deal with deaths. My mom had cancer, and trouble with my kids and relationships, and just basically life. And when I'm not connected to other people who are also in that fight with me, then I'm just like enduring. All I'm doing is just enduring. And it's very, it's painful. And it's actually, to be honest, it's like, it's very, what can I say? I'm not going to say it's not worth it, because that sounds very dramatic. But like, I don't want to live like that. I don't want to live in a way that is very, it's just like existing. I want to have a good time. I want to be able to give something to this earth and to the people in it. I want to be able to love everybody as best I can. I talk about it all the time that, I have friends on all sides of the aisle. Look, I have friends that think that kid Kyle Rittenhouse is a hero, and I love them. And I have friends that think that, he should rot in jail and blah, blah, blah. And, who believe in on both sides, who believe in the delusions that are being sold to us by separating us. They're like, and I don't know what the truth is in that whole story. I just know, it's okay. That's the only thing that I know, that it's okay. You can believe in any of those things and we can still be pals. And you don't have to try to convince me, and I don't have to try and convince you, but maybe if we learn a little bit from each other, it's like, okay, I understand. Technically, he got away, right? You follow the letter of the law, he got away. I'm not a lawyer. I don't pretend to be. I'm not like a Facebook lawyer where all of a sudden everybody got their fucking JD in the last year, Meanwhile, they're, a bricklayer, or they are a firefighter, or they work in an office somewhere, But all of a sudden now, the same way, they're all like virologists now, if that's even the right word. And now they're all lawyers, and everybody's an expert. But the truth is that I can tell you just from my experience, and I don't believe that I'm this unique, is that just because you get away doesn't mean that you got away, Just because technically, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things technically that were, that I did in my life that maybe I get away in a technicality, but, it still ain't right, And one thing I learned in AA, they tell you there's no right way to do a wrong thing. And, so I'm happy the kid Danny is on his way. 1 year, it's very admirable, dealing with mental health and figuring out who he is and all of that stuff. And he took buses and trains to get to meet. He did everything. That's how he got it. He got it one day at a time. But now the work begins. Now the work begins. Now he he went from being a cold caller to like an account opener. And now he's got to open these accounts. And now he's got to face himself. He's got to understand that one true statement that I say all the time is that we are not as sick as we want to be. That there is a way out for everyone. And that's the truth. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. And we'll see you back again for some more sit downs, some more interviews. Maybe I'll set this thing up, which I want to do, to field some telephone calls if this gets any traction or whatever. But the truth is that I really just want this to help people, as many people as I possibly can. Not with infinite wisdom, but just with experience. And that's it. So, all right, guys, peace.